Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to High Top Sports Oregon. I'm Cody the Professor. We got Derek the Duck. I want to thank our proud sponsors, BetUS. They power this whole video all season long. Go ahead, check them out. We will do a little bit of our gambling. I think we won last week. But go check them out, betus.com. But first, let's get right into what we need to talk about. Ducks absolutely pummel Washington after what? You were 0-3 against the UWs.
Yeah. Dan was finally able to right the ship. He's looking at a solid 1-3 record against Washington right now. But let's be honest, the most important one's always the last one, right? So yeah, Oregon came out absolutely boat raced UW, kind of like many people thought. I know on our show last week we kind of talked about it was going to go one of two ways. It was either going to be a hell of a lot closer than we cared it to be, or it was going to be a blowout. And fortunately for Duck fans, we got to see the latter.
So let's kind of break down this game a little bit. Final score 49-21. I would say the star of the show, Jordan James. I've been banging on the drum about how good he is. He's an NFL back, and his stat line kind of shows it. He did everything well. You have you got 15 touches, 99 yards, 6.6 yards average, two touchdowns, 16-yard long. But you also have him for 40 yards in receiving, catching out of the backfield, and looked explosive between the tackles again, just running right through people. This is a attribute of Jordan James that he has kind of taken on throughout the season. Not like this at the very beginning of the season. Kind of tried to bounce it outside all the time. I don't know what's gotten into him, but he is just leveling kids out there.
Yeah, you are spot on. That's something we talked about as well. Early on, it was a lot of those, going outside the tackles, trying to get fancy with it, get himself the ball in space, which I understand it. But I think what's happened over the last couple of weeks is he's really started to hone in on the type of back that he is. When you can go through the tackles and meet a linebacker head on in the A gap and run through his face, like that tells you the type of back you are. And that's not to say he can't make that one cut jump. He's still a very explosive player in that regard too. But to really see him kind of hone in on that power back setting over the last couple weeks it's been absolutely beautiful to watch unfold.
And then you got the lightning back. No, you get a little thunder lightning action going on. Noah Whittington, 9 carries, 67 yards, 7.4 yards average, one touchdown, 20-yard long. The home run hitter in Noah Whittington.
Yeah, no, Noah's kind of been that dude for the last couple of years. I mean, last year he was out for the second half of the season with an injury bug. Obviously, able to come back in this year and produce right away. And this is just kind of what we've seen all year, right? You're not going to see him light up the stat sheet for 200 with another 100 yards receiving because you have a Jordan James in front of him. But what he is the perfect complementary back. Albeit last night he did have a fumble loss, which it's going to happen in games like that. However, he came back and made his presence felt, and it's just such a blessing to have that thunder and lightning kind of combination.
For sure, for sure. All right, and then let's go ahead. Let's do our betting, and then we're going to break down the wide receiver core and then the defense. But first, we got a big game here. Arizona Cardinals at the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings kind of have squeaked one out every week. It hasn't looked great. I think this is their comeback game where they show that they are a dominant player trying to make a Super Bowl run. It's 3.5. I'm gonna take the 3.5. I'm gonna take the money line. The money line isn't great. It's -175. So technically I wouldn't take the money line. And then 45 under over. I'm gonna go ahead and take the 45 over. I don't think that the Cardinals have enough defense for Jefferson and company.
Yeah, I would mirror that exact bet. I very much think in the same way. I'd take the Minnesota points. I really like the over. Both teams have highly explosive offenses who are capable of, probably not having in the NFL, but put up those points on their own, And I would say both defenses have sputtered at times throughout the year. So it's kind of hard to lean on that. So I would mirror that same bet. I think Minnesota looks good. This is kind of their about get right game. And, being a Seahawk fan, I'm always here for a Cardinal loss. So I'm with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, the defense has been spotty. It's been great at times for the Minnesota Vikings, and then obviously not so great at times. But if we are wrong, that's okay, because right now, use the code YouTube150. You get a 150% back on your first deposit, 125 on your second deposit up to $2,000 at betus.com with the code YouTube150. All right, let's go ahead and let's talk about the defense. Obviously, Bryce, 11 tackles, 4 solo, 1 sack, 2 tackle for a loss. Ungale, 2 sacks, 3 solos, 2 tackle for losses. Kobe Savage, a guy that we said in the preview game had to be good, tackle for a loss, 3 tackles for total. Um, it's just it's a combined bunch. There's no superstar on this one, but Bryce showing up and having a big game, and then obviously Mateo Ugangale, which I've learned to pronounce now that we are like at the end of the season. So it's great. But those guys just being star-studded and having great games.
Yeah, yeah. Watch out, Prof. Just know the Duck fans are coming for your head from pronouncing Mateo Uyunglele. They're coming for your head. They always do. But
Yep.
yeah, Bryce Betcher once again just doing what he's done all year. He's the definition of kind of that lunch pail kid in the linebacker room, just flying all over the field, does exactly what you ask him to do, and an absolute disruptor in the pass game last night as well, which was a very welcome sight. So it's nice to see that one. And obviously, as you mentioned, Mateo kind of continuing to do what Mateo does. I think this year he's going to be sitting at something like 11 and a half sacks currently. Had a phenomenal year. Jordan Birch, once again, 2.5 sacks on his own last night, who was questionable to play. Obviously made his presence felt. And then just the D line as a whole. With Derek Harmon, he was able to make his presence felt. Jamari Caldwell didn't have the greatest of games in terms of stat sheet. However, he was a major factor all night, kind of creating disruption. The one thing we were talking about when we were watching the game last night was it reminded me a lot of the Washington State game last year with Cam Ward, where in the first half, Cam was kind of running free. Oregon had a pretty difficult time kind of containing those mobile quarterbacks, and that's something we kind of saw through the first quarter and a half last night. And I was talking to one of my buddies, and I said, this reminds me a lot of it. And I was like, just wait till Dan figures out that spy situation. They put a spy on Cam last year, made those right reads, and it was ineffective. And it very much happened again this way, where Denman Williams, he was able to have a nice completion percentage, but once that spy was on and the threat of his legs was kind of neutralized, that Washington offense took a major dip in production. So it was nice to be able to see some in-game adjustments. Something that we were not seeing with our favorite boy down in South Beach, who just took his L to Syracuse last night. So a very welcome sight to see Dan make those adjustments.
Syracuse did the same thing in the second half. They spied a linebacker, sometimes two, on Cam Ward, and Cam Ward wasn't allowed to just run around like a chicken, like Houdini, like a chicken with his head cut off, and it stopped him.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, he very much reminds me of the same way. And Denman Williams, he's going to be a phenomenal quarterback. So for the for Washington fans who are going to be watching this video, I will give him his flowers. He did play really well, being a young guy, taking over for Will Rogers. So played a great game in that aspect. But it's just one of those things where if you're not completely comfortable in that offense and making those right reads, and you don't quite have that timing down, once that spy's on you and you don't have the opportunity to kind of go jailbreak offense, it gets a lot more difficult to produce on the field, and especially when you're playing a defense like Oregon has.
For sure. And let's go ahead and just circle this Oregon rush defense. They're pretty good. You had 4 carries for 23 yards with Muhammad. You had Desmond Williams Jr., 22 carries, 17 yards. But it's a little bit different with him because sacks do negate some of his yardage. And then
Correct.
Jonah Coleman, 11 totes for 3 yards at .03 average.
That's the one we're talking about right there. The one thing I've heard all year was they're like, oh, Ashton Jeanty ran all over Oregon. Jonah Coleman's going to do the same. Like, he's going to be the one to, keep Washington in the game. And I think Oregon heard the messages, and I think they very much understood if they neutralized Jonah Coleman, the rest of the things are going to fall into place. And they absolutely did. He was bottlenecked all night long. He did have a rush touchdown from, I think, a yard out. So, do with that as you will. He's a big dude. So, kind of makes sense they use him in that goal line situation. But the run defense was phenomenal all night. Like you said, Denman Williams, his stats are a little bit skewed. He did have a couple nice scampers, but with 10, 11 sacks, whatever they had last night, that kind of negates a lot of that yardage. But Washington knew coming into this game, if they wanted any opportunity, they had to run the ball effectively. And unfortunately for them, that was not the case at all.
For sure. And then, not great third quarter offense, but they did score. So Oregon did score in the third quarter. That's a big announcement here at High Top Sports Oregon. We gotta give flowers when flowers are due. They scored in the third quarter.
I don't know what it is. If any Oregon fans want to, fill me in because I'm still clueless as to why that we hit this third quarter and all of a sudden the offense becomes abysmal. But they did punch one in yesterday. I'm going to take flowers where flowers are due. We love to see that. But like we were saying before the show, if we continue to have these situations where that third quarter is kind of a major regression for the Oregon Duck offense in the playoff, when you start playing higher quality teams, you're probably
Georgia.
not skating by. Right. You're probably not skating by. And like you said, Georgia's one of those teams who, albeit they didn't look great, right? That's point known. But in the second half, they were a different team because they were able to make those in-game adjustments. And that's something Kirby's done exceptionally well throughout his tenure at Georgia. So hopefully, Oregon is able to figure out their third quarter woes. We've been saying it for the last, 12 games. Hopefully game number 13 is the one, though.
All right. And then we will be producing a Big Ten championship game preview, and then obviously the post game. We will do that for you at High Top Sports Oregon. Super excited. Oregon, welcome to the Big Ten. No better way to welcome yourself by kicking the absolute door in, bludgeoning everybody that you've faced in the Big Ten, including Ohio State, and then making it to the Big Ten championship your first year. There are teams out there, Miami, that has been in conferences a very long time and hasn't won a single conference championship. Seems like Oregon is here to stay and here to stay at the top.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, Prof. It was just really weird. I was just told all off season how we couldn't compete in the Big Ten. I was just wondering if any of those fans have an update for us. So if you guys want to fill me in on how Oregon's first year in the Big Ten did, feel free to hit my DMs on Twitter. I'd love to have a conversation.
For sure. All right, guys, that closes up the show. I am Cody the Professor. We got Derek the Duck, and Ducks get the big win. We will, like I said, we will fill you in on that on the Big Ten championship game coming up. But we will see you later. Good win for the Ducks. Good win for the good guys. I'm Cody the Professor. Thank you, our proud sponsor, BetUS, and we will see you later.